What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So I finally got iOS 13 on my iPhone 7, and I kind of wanted to do an updated review on the iPhone 7, pretty much see how it's holding up in the middle of 2019, kind of looking backwards and also looking forward. We know a lot more about the iPhone 7 now that we really didn't necessarily know in the earlier part of this year when I did my first double eye swipe, which is, is it still worth it? And so I kind of want to delve deep, not only in terms of the way it feels and everything, because that necessarily hasn't really changed too much since earlier this year, but I kind of want to talk about the software and also the future, looking on the future of the iPhone 7, seeing whether this phone is still worth it and whether it's still going to be worth it moving on. So the first thing I want to say, if you want a more in-depth review, if you want something that's longer than just a couple minutes, you can always go back to my first double eye swipe I did earlier this year. A lot of that information is still pretty much valid to this day, so you can watch that. Nothing's really outdated. Now, this phone specifically came out in 2016, and what I'll definitely tell you is this phone does not feel cheap. Like I've said before, I did the iPhone 7 Plus video not too long ago, and the iPhone 7 is right up there. This phone does not feel that cheap at all. I mean, if you look in the front, there's definitely some bezel on it. Like, it's not like a futuristic phone. It doesn't really match up to what we have nowadays. Even with the Pixel 3a, that's supposed to be like a budget phone kind of thing. Even that has pretty small bezels, whereas the iPhone 7 really does have a lot of bezel, but you do have to remember this thing came out at least like a year or two before the bezel-less trend started happening, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. We do have a 4.7-inch IPS panel on the front. It's still pretty good in my opinion. It has a lot of the cool features, Force Touch, things like that. We also have Touch ID 2 on the front as well. And looking above the display, the front earpiece actually doubles as somewhat of a front-facing speaker. And this is the first iPhone that we actually saw that, so that's awesome. We also have IP67 dust and water resistance. We also have a front-facing camera that isn't bad at all either. And looking on the back, we have a 12 megapixel camera. I think this camera is still very solid. I really see nothing wrong with it. You can shoot 4K videos and you have live photos, and you don't have portrait mode on this phone like you do on the iPhone 7 Plus, but you know what? A lot of those features that even the newest iPhones have and even the newest Androids, you can get from like a third-party app on the App Store or something. So yes, you don't get them stock built into the camera, but you can get them some way, one way or another. So that's definitely a really awesome thing. I'll definitely tell you the camera is one of the best things about this device still. It's a very, very good camera. Now, like I said earlier, the main thing I wanted to hit on in this specific video was actually the software. So I kind of covered iOS 13 quite a bit. I said, it's definitely going to have problems. iOS 13 is still in beta, but once the official version comes out in a couple months, I'll go ahead and make an updated review on this video and then kind of fill you in on the gaps and everything. But as of right now, putting the bugs and everything aside, iOS 13 brings a lot of cool features within the iPhone 7. We have pretty much all the features that, the newest iPhones got, we're getting on the iPhone 7, which is awesome. We don't necessarily see that all the time, where all of the features are ported over to some of the oldest phones, and that's what I really, really love about this. And even though the phone is a little bit dated, we still have a pretty good processor, the Apple A10 chip. It also has 2 gigs of RAM, which is about the lowest I would go in terms of RAM for an iPhone. It handles apps just fine when I'm scrolling through things, when I'm opening apps, when I'm playing games. It handles iOS 13 very, very well, and it's been out for a couple weeks now. We're now on iOS 13 beta 2, and like I said, man, I think iOS 13, if Apple just focuses on stability, they can definitely have a humongous hit on their hands. Now, looking at the future of the iPhone 7, some people might say, oh, it's probably going to get iOS 14 and it's going to end there. But here's the reason why I wanted to make an updated video, was because we saw the iPod Touch 7 Gen get released. Now, you might be thinking, what does the iPod Touch 7 Gen and iPhone 7 have in common? What is it even doing with this? What I'm going to tell you is the iPod 7 and the iPhone 7 both have the same chipset, the Apple A10 chip. Now, Apple supports their iOS versions per chipset, so they supported all the Apple A9 chip devices, even though the iPhone SE had a smaller screen. They supported them based on the chipset, not necessarily on anything else really that much. On the iPhone 7 and the iPod 7, Apple just started selling that, so I don't see it being that cool and people, just looking over the fact that Apple would only support it for one more version of iOS on top of the one that's already coming out. I think some people would get mad at that, so I see them, supporting the iPod 7 for an extra version. So I think the iPod 7 would end on iOS 15. And the iPhone 7 will probably end up leaving on iOS 15 as well. That's a long-winded way of saying that, but hopefully that is the case. Again, we're so early on that we're looking at like 2 versions of iOS after this one that's not even released, so that's kind of a little bit of a thing right there. Hopefully that is the case. I would love to see that. But ultimately, to answer the question, I think the iPhone 7 is definitely still worth it in 2019. It's going to be worth it for pretty much as long as it's supported and then some. A lot of things are going to change, like we've seen with this video, and just within the last couple months, a lot of things have changed with the iPhone 7, a new device with the same chipset as well as a new iOS version. But ultimately, the iPhone 7 is here to stay and has my thumbs up of approval. If you want to go ahead and pick one up, I'll leave a link in the description below. It'll be the cheapest one I find on Amazon. Go ahead and get it through there. It'll be supporting the channel at the same time, so that'll mean so much. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys can hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down. It'll mean so much if you guys could click on them, but more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.